which is good news. Um, in part, what I want to try and achieve today is for us to come up with some consensus as to what we're doing together, but also share our experiences as well. Um, I've been involved in a few things with some of the members of the team, which I'm going to just explain. But also, I'd like this to be a forum where we can share things achievements and things that everybody's doing, because at the end of the day, I think we need to um, reinforce each other to give us confidence that we can move things forward. So I'll kick off immediately, if I may, and then we can go from there. Okay. Um, I don't think you can see my screen yet, can you? I'll try again.
No, I can't see anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. So the golden thread has got a number of different things that it can satisfy. Clearly, the golden thread is sort of mentioned, and it's largely driven by the Building Safety Act, and obviously the fire safety side of things as well. But the new social housing regulation, which has come in, which is also looking at things from AWAB's law, which is about mold and air quality. That's going to hit us quite soon. Well, really now. Um, there's also things that people aren't necessarily aware of, like the Defective Premises Act, which is another piece of the legislation I think can support improvement, and overall ESG. So we've got all of these different mechanisms. Um, as far as what can BIM for housing and BIM in asset management offer, we've already got the relationship with the government. I think it's been recognised that we've helped, and obviously we started the Golden Thread Initiative Asset and Survey Information Group in about 4 years ago. A lot of you have contributed to that. Um, and that was just a note I got from Tim Galloway saying that he felt that what we were doing was worthwhile. Um, I think most of you are aware of the resources that we've got, but I'm very keen to make sure that certainly the task force, you're all fully aware of the things that we've already done and that you can draw on. So, for example, we've got the Miro board. Now, the Miro board was set up largely initially by Jarek and Daz from David Miller Architects when they were navigating through understanding the new regulations, and they've produced a Miro board which quite a few people in this group have already contributed to, but it's a live Miro board. So if you are interested in getting involved in that and you've not been involved already, would you put just Miro board into the chat, and we'll make sure that you're engaged with that. We've got a little video that Daz cut a few months ago, just in one of the meetings to explain that. Okay. Um, so overall, why are we doing the this task group? Um, Obviously, there's the thing at the moment where 75% of gateway applications are being rejected because they've got missing or flawed information. Um, and also, um, one of the shocking things about that is the number of them that were rejected because the fire safety information wasn't right. So that's part of what we're doing with this particular initial effort with the the Golden Thread Task Force is looking at the fire safety side of things, but we're not saying that's what it's all about. We're also finding, from a very practical point of view, that most asset managers are having to survey brand new buildings to produce asset lists. So, which is crazy, and that's something that we obviously within BIM and asset management we're very keen to reverse. Um, we've also got the great connections in with the BIM for housing groups. So BIM, the operations group, the development group met just on the 29th, so just 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that they had decided, David Pote had already taken on board what we've provided them in terms of the Regulation 38 checklist. And he started to put together something that Notting Hill Genesis were going to issue to their supply chain. And Origin Housing, or now Places for People, they've been doing the same thing. They've been upgrading their Regulation 38 checklist as well. And in the meeting, we sort of agreed that it was crazy if Notting Hill Genesis and Places for People are asking for something slightly different from their supply chain. It makes a lot more sense for everybody to be aligned. So what they agreed to do was to uh, let us put together the information requirements and look at the Regulation 38 in particular requirements, and then put that together in a standardized way, and then they will then adopt that, which I think puts huge benefit and value to the work that we're doing in this group. What that's going to do, it's going to make it a lot easier for supply chains to prepare the information that's needed so that they're not being asked by different organizations for slightly different information. It's also going to make it a lot easier to review and audit that information. We can then automate elements of it and use AI properly to be able to get through a huge amount of information. And it also makes it a lot easier to populate other systems. So, which is the whole point, really, of the golden thread process. Um, a lot of you will have already seen this, but I'm just going to run over it. The poll that we did, I think, is testament to the fact that we've got to do something on this. Only 89% of people felt that their chief executives, or the people that control the worst purse strings, actually know what their liabilities are under the Building Safety Act. And then there's a range of different things, which I think you've seen here. Do you think the fire and emergency file is going to be accurate and updated with any changes? Also, do, only 92%, well, 92% of people didn't believe they were going to get the right Regulation 38 information. So I won't go through all of these, but I think this is valuable stuff. And we need to keep pushing this because it's clear that the industry needs help in upskilling. For example, um, there was it wasn't clear as to whether people understood that the regulator needs to be informed when a fire door is replaced. There's all sorts of it depends sort of thing, but I think we need to have some sort of consistency on that. And there's people on this call that have got absolutely the right answers to that, but other people may be asking those questions. So that's why the community is so important. Um, so I'm going to just show quickly what we've been doing over this last few weeks since the last meeting. But what we also want to do is to set up each morning. We're going to set up a sort of a toolbox talk session where people can come along if they want and just explain any questions that they've got or any answers that they've come up with to celebrate success, for example. that you've managed to do something that, you feel others might benefit from. Or conversely, you've got a challenge and you want some help. So Richard and I are going to sort of alternate between it. We're going to be there at 8:30 every morning for the next few weeks. We're going to give it a try. We'll only just for half an hour, and if you wish, come on to the meeting. And I'm not suggesting at all that everybody would be attending. It's just it becomes a place for us to do that. Richard, have you
Yeah,
got a
think. Sorry, can I think of it like a drop-in centre? You want to
yeah,
pop in for 10 minutes, or you just got a little query that you might have some. There could be somebody on board that could just on the call that could actually answer that. It's not formal in any way. It's a chat, but it's an open chat for when you feel like it. If there just happens to be something, or you're having a coffee before you go into work, or just as you get in, and you got nothing to do, pop in and see if there's anything interesting going on. Sometimes there'll be a lot of people, sometimes there won't be any, sometimes there won't be many. It'll just be a mix. But take it as that. It's casual, and if you've got an issue, if you've got anything, or just something good you're proud of, you want to share, that's the time. That's a good place to do it.
yeah. What we also would like to do, because we've been talking this through with Pencho from who's the senior fire engineer, and one of the things that we'd like to be able to do is look at what information actually is needed for what purpose. So, looking at actual, real, practical examples. I had this particular problem, or I was asked this, and what we found was that we couldn't find the information that we needed for whatever purpose, or we found it quite easily, and it was a real success. So, if we could think about scenarios, this happened, and therefore we needed this information, it means that we've got something tangible we can start to use, and also that can be used to start to train large language models as well. So anyway, give some thought to that. Um, this is what Matt, myself, and Pencho from Places for People did at Digital Construction Week. So we had a presence there. Quite a few of the people on this call, like Phil and Paul, there were also at the event. But one of the questions that we ran a panel saying, why aren't FMs using BIM models that we hand over? And we had it was absolutely, it's standing room only, the session. So there's obviously a lot of interest in it. Um, and that's Pencho there, just going detailing what he needs for Regulation 38 information. Matt Wilkes there, Matt Wilkie's there, um, and one of the things that we were doing there, you will have all seen this before, but the principle here is actually understanding what the information in Regulation 38 is needed for. So, and this is really emphasizing the fact that we need all of the information in a joined up way to create a proper golden thread that relates different systems together and then makes an understanding of what that asset is doing and what it's protecting. So we can then have a range of different software that is all gluing together to do that. And we also showed some examples of some really good information that a fire stopping contractor has provided, that they go through and serial number each of the fire stopping seals. But the challenge with it is the way they locate that information, which I understand why they're doing it for their purposes, but they put a single pin on a floor plan. So therefore, to see where all of the pins are, they've got to open up 1,300 floor plans, which obviously is a bit impractical. So one of the things that we've done is created a routine that extracts all those uh, um, pins from the PDF reports, that's a bit of innovation with data engineering and a bit of AI. And if you want to know how we're doing that, then put the name in the chat to say fire stopping, just put fire stopping information, we can let you see this. But this is what we're doing. We're actually pulling out the individual tag numbers from the PDF report and also where they are in the floor plan. So we can then visualize that all in one go. So you can actually see which fire stop test had which information. So you can walk along a corridor to see all the results. Um, the other thing that we did at Digital Construction Week, we spoke to lots of different uh, exhibitors there, the software companies, and everybody. The thing I find really encouraging, I don't know what you think, Phil Hannibus from A-Site, but I was really encouraged by the level of collaboration that people were willing to do. APIs were absolutely on the radar for everybody. Would you agree with that, Phil?
Um, I personally didn't get off the stand much at all because uh, without this sounding like a sales pitch in any way, shape, or form, I was literally talking about our cognitive CDE the whole time. So unfortunately, I didn't really get to go around. But it's something we're focused on at the moment, and we did a talk about this as well in terms of a true CDE doesn't really matter where the data sits as long as you've got a single source of access to that data, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're positioning at the moment.
So that's overall, I think for everybody's, I think it's really encouraging that we're doing that. And then just my experiences over the last few days, I was at Lang O'Rourke's factory yesterday with at the build off site event. Um, what BOPAS do? This is an insurance scheme where they will provide warranty, 60-year warranty for anything that's been um, gone through the process. So this is for off-site manufactured buildings, modular buildings, and the like. And it's got to be part of the mix going forward in terms of quality. So I'm just mentioning that because that was the event yesterday. I'm promoting the golden thread into these people. Everybody's got a different view of the golden thread, but that's part. I think that's part of our solution. And this was the factory at Lang O'Rourke. And then I don't know, Caroline, are you on the call at the moment? Caroline from CBRE? Maybe not. So this, what one of our stars here. This is Caroline Flynn. She's from.
Sorry, I am on the call. Sorry, I was on mute and I was trying to. I didn't realize I was on mute. Sorry, I
No,
am on the
no,
call.
no problem, Caroline. So, do you want to just explain a little bit about what we did together? Because this was a really useful thing from my perspective because I've never done this before. Yeah, I've got lots of people who are very good at doing this, including people like Barry. But Caroline and I, well, Caroline was steering me actually, because, but I'll show you in a second what actually happened. Do you want to just explain why we're doing this, Caroline?
Yeah. So when George approached me, I thought of dip him into the deep end of things. So I took him to one of our sites, which is quite a big site, and also with loads of fire doors because it's 11 floors. So this is up in Leeds. So we took George up there and we were showing him around. We managed to get, I've used the 360 camera before, but over here in the video, what I was trying to do is just to demonstrate where we've got the four boilers that we've got there?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And it was just to demonstrate how what would be in vision of the camera, what the camera would have in its vision. And after that, then we can label. But it was also, we were trying to also show the distance that what it covers, where would be our next picture, where would need to take our next picture. So that's what we're doing. And then George is gonna go away, try and find the assets in that area, and hopefully we can label them. from going forward, and be able to, obviously, as you can see, that's in one of the plant rooms. Now that site alone has got 6 plant rooms, or with various things. So those are some of the pictures that George and I took from that site. We had actually a great time, George, didn't we?
Absolutely. I think these are probably ones that you took actually, because they're better than mine.
Yeah, so it was just to show that, yeah, for us it would work, because obviously we would be able to show our client what we have, and when referring to an asset and its age, everybody would have that visibility of what we are referring to. And once it's gone through all the labeling and golden thread and all, we would actually be able to also show the location of where it is. Where is it, on the 6th floor? Because it's easier. It's easier for us as an account, because obviously that's up in Leeds, but our client is based in London. So that makes life much easier for us.
So if anybody would want to do a digital asset capture pilot, like we've just done here with Caroline, I mean we're actually going to get somebody that far more competent than me to look at this. But I think it would be useful. So if you've got something that you'd like to try this out on, we've got some cameras that we can share. Um, just put your name or just put DAC in the chat, and we can organise something for you. Um, I'm going to stop there now, just for a moment, and then um, at, for questions and things, because Barry's going to also show some stuff a little bit later on as well. Richard, can I hand back to you?
Yes, you can, certainly. So we've covered quite a lot of ground there, haven't we? Has anybody got any thoughts on anything George has had to say? There's a lot of interest in the Miro board and the fire stopping information. Anybody got any comments? Chris Cooper.
Yeah, hi guys. So I was at DCW on the Thursday, and I can completely concur that there is a positive vibe, especially regarding the Building Safety Act driving a desire for collaboration and realizing that you've got to get ahead of the digital thread. However, my concern is, why are we still creating PDFs? We need to make data machine readable. And as a digital engineer, supporting the built environment, I do have a concern about the industry's maturity in dealing with APIs and technical debt and the life cycle of data as well, especially when technology companies are fly-by-nights and tend to be disappearing within 10 years, and our structures will last 200. So appreciate anyone's thoughts on digital adoption and APIs, love it, but we also need to manage technical debt. Thank you.
Yeah, no, very good point. I'll just interject just briefly on that. Certainly, it's always been our mission to make all information machine readable. What's happened over the last few years is that we've come to the realization that that's great, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen immediately, and we have to also be aware that we have to kind of work in the old economy to some extent as well. George, what do you think about that? Let me just bring you on that.
Well, I think there's two things. One is that as Richard's saying there, we've got existing buildings that we have to be able to do this for existing buildings as well, Chris. And obviously, there's very few models for existing buildings. The second thing, which actually is more troubling and more challenging, Chris, is that the deliverable that everybody is creating is a PDF drawing or a PDF schedule. People are unwilling to provide the native data to the extent that what is very common practice, the very common practice is to strip out sheets from models because the IP of the drawings and also the concern about people modifying things afterwards is still very strong. So I think that's something that we need to bear in mind. It's certainly, I'm passionately, if anybody that's been involved with me over the last sort of 5 years on this, you'll know that I'm always talking about machine readable data. But in practice, that may not be the case.
Can I just ask, before I come on to Mandeep, can I just ask you, if you can, could you put your camera on when you're speaking? It's not a panic if you can't, but if you could, it just makes it better. Mandeep, there you go.
So it's good point there by Chris actually about people obviously still using PDFs, and one of the things I've noticed actually is the industry is kind of so stubborn, like where the kind of golden thread guidance has kind of stipulated use electronic facility rather than people using kind of PDFs which are intelligent or kind of collecting data in forms which can be translated into intelligent kind of readable information. They're actually now kind of scanning their paper forms or taking pictures of their digital forms and then uploading those on the electronic facility. So it is interesting the way industry's going. They're kind of having to drag them across the line. But obviously in this situation, completely appreciate why we have to do it, as George said, for the older buildings. But the point I was actually just going to ask about that camera was how does that camera work in terms of the coordination? Because what I'm trying to get to is like you've got stuff like the BLK 360, which it's probably obviously it'll be a lot more expensive, but it'll take your pictures, but also it can give you kind of accurate kind of point cloud data, millimeter accuracy. Does that camera have that same kind of functionality or?
No, that camera that I was using there is a Ricoh 360, and it's about £300.
Yeah.
So a BLK, as you know, is probably nearer 30,000.
Yeah. So I just had that question to ask. Yeah.
Okay, Philip. Do you prefer Phil or Philip?
It's Phil for me, but I'm pretty sure Pierre was in front of me.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Pierre. I'm sorry.
Very quickly, just in response to some of Chris's comments, I made a comment in the chat. It's about the impact of the decision in data capture on two streams. One which says at the beginning of the life cycle of the project, all the way through, with the different handovers. The second one is when we do it at handover, in other words, a photogrammetry, AI collection, etc. What are the differences? And the part here is about the measurement. What's the input, the effort, resources that go into it, and what the deliverable is. Now, if we want to go to the golden thread, that's important because we're putting in things based on performance initially and then on a product at the end. And we need to glue that, which is going to be, in my opinion, part of what the golden thread actually does. One of the things that we have got a serious problem with is there's not enough existing building records digitally and available. Just been looking at a facade remediation project here in London. It's by a certain company as an asset. It's student accommodation. The problem is there's no records apparently. In other words, part of this exercise, I think we need to take some initiative from Dubai, is to have a digital repository. How that gets managed, that's a much bigger question. But what it means is that from all the planning, all the operations, potential future predictive work, etc. So part of that thing about capturing information is that we've got large numbers of residential developments, which there's huge potential for. Again, something that's got to be discussed. PDF and native data, the one problem I have is that the PDF is an auditable and fixed record. So there is a place for it to be there. But at the same time, we need to start using IFC and native data that can actually perform interoperably. And the part there, George, we discussed it previously about Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, blockchain, and locking these things so that we have that record. And that would be another study by itself to make sure it makes everybody much more confident that the IP is not getting lost and that they have ownership still on that particular copyright that they have. Thank you.
Excellent, Pierre. Thank you. Phil.
The one thing that made me put my hand up was when I think it was the question about Chris talking about tech companies not lasting very long. ASIC have been around for 25 years. We're the only independently owned tech company, and I know there are a number of others, but even when you look at that, what's happening is a lot of companies are kind of changing the way and pivoting because they're being bought out by other companies, changing their names and so on. And that is where they're being lost from. So that's kind of one thing to take on board. And the other part of that is the reason that a lot of these new startup tech companies are failing is because people don't understand the value in what they're actually providing. So when you're looking at a cost comparison between two applications and one's more expensive than the other, the commercial people go, right, we'll go for the cheaper one, and not understanding the value of what it can and can't do. And in some instances, those are things like the difficulty, and like Pierre was mentioning and George was mentioning, of having two files associated with each other, the PDF and the native file, where they can actually be received. Some companies just cannot do that, which is why it's too difficult to share that information. And then they share uncontrolled copies outside of the CDE environment. And this is the problem that we kind of face all the time is ultimately it's very difficult in some cases to get people to understand the value of what they're buying when all they see is the pound signs.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to go back to Mandeep briefly. Barry's put a reply actually into the chat. Regarding 360 cameras, it's entirely possible to achieve 360 camera positions within a few centimeters of accuracy if that level of precision is required. I'll be covering, as in Barry will be covering that in the next DAC masterclass. The big issue with capturing 360 images isn't the camera, but knowing where they are taken so you can position them. Now, if anybody's interested in joining the DAC masterclass, put masterclass in the chat. That's coming up the tail end of the month. I think it's the 29th. So put masterclass in the chat if you're interested in doing that. Okay. Oh, and Barry's the next one to speak, so I've probably preempted him. Go, Barry.
Hi guys. No, I was just about to address Mandeep's question.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it's okay. I've done an answer. That's fine. So we've covered that, but I'm on again in a few minutes anyway, where I'll be telling a little bit more about it.
So Nikki,
okay, that's fine. That's it. I'm done for now.
Oh, okay, no, sorry. Right, so masterclass. People are putting their names down. Come along to the DAC masterclass on the 29th, I believe. Put masterclass in the chat. Thanks, Barry. Nikki. If you're talking, you're on mute.
okay, shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. George, do you have more, or do you want to go on to some of the talking points from the conversation with Daz yesterday?
No, I there's just a couple of things more before that.
Okay.
I want to just ask Matt Wilkie. Matt, is it worth you just reprising the door example? Are you on the call, Matt?
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm at a funny angle because I'm working on two laptops at the same time. So,
Okay, if I put this up, can you just speak to it?
yeah, no problem.
Carry on.
Have you got the image, George?
Oh, sorry. I wasn't sharing my bloody screen. Sorry.
You just can't get the stuff, can you? So.
You just can't know.
So just the first one, or just this one. Okay. Okay. So in this one, what you've got is you imagine a hospital or clinic can have more than one front door, and what the reporting often is the front door's faulty, but there could be multiple receptions, so everybody's got the front door that's nearest to them. Now, it has two impacts operationally and from a life cycle perspective. If the doors aren't actually documented correctly, the first thing is that you may get call outs and the engineers are fixing the wrong door, which is quite common. You can also get the fact that you don't know which door is actually regularly faulty, because you may want a door that is always breaking down to change that one out. But you lose the transparency across the fact that you've got multiple doors. And from a life cycle perspective, it also means you can have a similar issue of replacing the wrong doors, or you're not sure which one's the problematic doors, because you may be trying to extend the life of the doors as well. So I chose this scenario because it's a simple one, but it gets bigger and bigger as you move into things like fire doors and internal doors, because you sometimes have, like, say, corridor 4, which may have 20 doors in it, and it says door replacement, where they're not logged, matching the drawings, etc. And you could have defects, issues with the doors, or things are not fire doors that should be fire doors, and stuff that's actually down as a fire door that isn't a fire door. So this one's a typical example. The FD on the drawing is actually not fire door, it's actually first floor door 2. So the point is, even the naming conventions, you have to be very careful that they're actually correct and in line with what you need. But what you find with fire door contractors, they're often not given the drawings with the numbering and naming conventions on the drawings. So what you'll have is a contractor will come in and go, okay, didn't provide any information. They'll just start from the front of the building and go through door 1, door 2, door 3, up to door 100, 200. The problem with that is it doesn't correlate to the drawings, unless you actually send the drawings over to them and ask them to match the doors back up. And even then, it can be a bit problematic, depending if the drawings have been kept up to date as well. So it is important that the doors are correct, but it also means that if you can tie it together with the original door schedules, you can actually make sure the ironmongery and everything's associated with that specific door is correct as well, because a lot of stuff seems to appear on doors from Screwfix, which may not be correct for that specific door type.
The other thing I would just reinforce on what Matt's just said there, I think is really important. There's a huge amount of effort gone in by the industry, in particular the door manufacturers, to create their own golden threads. Now, that's no bad thing, but the problem is that the information that they're capturing is typically locked in an individual app. And because of that, it's not being shared back, as Matt's saying, into the master information model. And the only way you can see the information about those doors is through the app that the organization has, who's done the inspections, for example, have created. So, and then if they lose the contract and somebody else picks the contract up in 5 years' time, when they then go through, they may use, even if they use the same application, the numbering will be different. So what it's really important to do, as Matt was saying earlier, everything needs to be referenced back to the original GA and the original asset information, so that any inspection that takes place next year, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, is always against that same unique asset. So that's part of what we're trying to achieve. Okay.
I think the other thing there, George, just to finish off, is it's why we end up with so many PDFs as well, because they then will print them to PDF. So they've got a document of each door, which then ends up in not a true document in the sense of a digital one, but a copy of a door.
Sure. Thank you. Barry, can I hand over to you? Barry's got some examples of something else that he's been doing this last couple of weeks. You're on mute, Barry.
Just realised that. Okay, can you hear me now and see? Oh,
we can. Looks great.
Right, okay, can you see a fire extinguisher?
Yep.
Okay, this is this is just leading into the digital asset capture workshop. what we've just heard from what we just heard about is about locating doors and things. This applies for any sort of way of navigating your building. And the masterclass we'll be doing, we'll be looking at 360 imagery and how we can use it. And there's some very simple things that confuse people a lot, like some of the field capture techniques, like which direction is my 360 imagery actually pointing? Is it north, south, east, or west? That can be very confusing. How can I get myself out of the image? We'll be covering that as well. And we'll be covering some of the more arcane things about 360, like how to manage them all. But this is just one example of a thing I'm doing at the moment for asset management in it's actually a converting paper mill, just as one example, just to show you the level of detail that you can get and how far you can zoom in to get detail. But one thing you'll notice about this is I'm not in any of the pictures, and this is fine when you've got things to hide behind. But if I'm doing a big haul or something, you press the button and then you've got to run to hide away, and you don't need to do that. So we'll be covering how we can get around that and remove anybody or the camera operator from the image, so you don't have to keep running around and hiding behind a cupboard or shutting a door or whatever. But this is a job I'm doing for as a way of, it's asset management, but it's to solve a particular problem. In this case, what we've been asked to do is map all the places where they need to put lubrication. But also, after they've done that, they also want to use it to manage all the fire equipment assets that they've got. So you've got obviously the extinguishers, but then you've got all the fire suppression systems in the roof and stuff like that. And you can see you can get a really good quality of detail from these 360 cameras. And just navigate through it. So really, I just wanted to introduce what we're going to be doing, and the thing we're going to be covering at the digital, at the asset capturing workshop, where we're focusing on 360, how you can get this sort of image, how you can remove people, but more importantly, how do you make life simple for you? If you put the camera in the floor, you quite often you don't know where north or south is. So we'll be showing you through some practical applications of how it can work, and you can get great images from it. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say, is just as an introduction to this. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you on the 29th.
Barry, the other thought that we had was that we've got that plant room that we're looking to tag up. So I was looking to get some volunteers, maybe from this group, who would be interested, maybe next week or the week after, in getting involved in a workshop on that. Are you able to show anything of that?
I'm not on this computer, no. But
Okay.
Basically we can. But I can. If anybody's interested, just drop me a line and we can show them, and we'll prepare some 360s. So it's a plant room to tag up. So this is the plant room in mind is a data center that we've been working on. It's really just to show people how easy it is to tag things up remotely and pass it over to different subject matter experts, because you may want to have different subject matter experts tagging up this to show, who've got expertise in certain things like fire engineering or might be or structural engineering or whatever.
I think it's more building services. So if there's anybody on the call that's knowledgeable about pumps and building services and ventilation and things like that, or sprinkler systems and the like, then if you're interested in participating in spending an hour or so with Barry and me on this data center project, then that might be something that you would find useful. Just put your name in, saying, I suppose, data center. Would that make do it, Richard?
Right. Or tagging. Call it tagging.
Yeah, sure. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's it. Yeah.
Any other questions from anybody? Okay. So
should we just have just a recap on what we're doing in the chat?
Yes, please, Richard.
Yeah. So Anybody who's interested in the masterclass on the digital asset capture and cameras, put masterclass in the chat. Anybody who's interested in what Georgian has just been talking about with Barry, put tagging in the chat, and we'll get back to you on time and day for that. I made a mistake on the masterclass. It's not the 29th, that's a Sunday, so it's the 27th. So put masterclass in there. Even if you can't make it, put masterclass and we'll keep you posted.
The other thing, Richard, is if anybody wants to borrow a 360 camera to do what Caroline and I did, then if you put something like DAC pilot or 360
just put pilot. Just put pilot if you want to. You're interested in joining that pilot scheme whereby you borrow a camera with a bit of instruction and try it out for yourself. The other things that we've got in the chat are the mirror board. So anybody wants to get involved in the mirror board, and the last one I believe is the fire stopping information. So just to keep everybody up to that, because we do have people in and out, so to make sure everybody's right up to. So there we go. It's just buzzing away. Excellent. Great. Okay, so next thing, George, where are we going? Are we going on the DAS meeting, or do you have something else?
Yeah, I think probably. Could you lead on the DAS meeting, or is that
the DAS meeting? Okay, we had a very good meeting yesterday with DAS, who is the lead of the BIM for Housing design group. Now, he came up with a couple of things in discussion with George that we kind of made a note of as to be relevant for this meeting, and we'd be very interested to hear your view of that. Now, this is just my reminders, so George will have to probably translate it into something that makes some sense. We're finding that a lot of people are capturing information on open space purely to get evidence of what subbies have actually been doing. Now, this is useful for asset teams, but unfortunately, they don't like to share that information because it could be used as evidence against them. So valuable information is being lost through a loss of trust. Now, George, I seem to recall during the meeting yesterday, you have a solution for that. Perhaps you can explain the problem better than I have and the solution that you have for that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so it's not just open space, by the way.
No, that's such as.
Yeah, so the good news is that all of the major systems like Oculo and BuildOts and Disperse, there's half a dozen of them or so, and actually PlanRadar has just launched their own version of it as well. The principle is that normally their customer is the construction company, and they're doing it to hold their supply chain to account, but they're nervous about making all of that available to everybody. So just in case something is there that there could be a problem with, and the solution is that they can be selective in terms of which of the photos they reveal. So the point is that if, for example, they can go through and identify a particular 360 that shows the assets that were there before the ceiling was installed or before it was closed out, the contractor can decide which ones they want to share. So they don't have to share everything. Yeah. Now, you might argue that they should share everything on an open basis, but we're in a very contractual, litigious environment, so you can understand I can understand their concerns on that. So that overcomes that particular problem, but to some extent, it comes back to the fact that we need to start to be more collaborative and less adversarial in terms of how we're doing this, because otherwise it's going to drive people out of the way. So that was one of the points, Richard.
So,
What was it?
so basically, what you're saying is we can share, but it's possible to be selective in what is shared, so that there's no risk involved in doing the sharing. Is that basically?
Yeah, exactly, and it comes back to people like Phil, who a site, who are experts in the common data environment space, where you have basically sections that are accessible to clients. The clients don't see everything, do they, Phil?
No, not at all. You're right. I mean, openly, you can have all of your access permissions. Sorry, I forgot to put the camera rule on. Ultimately, you can have your access permissions based on all of the folders, the workspaces you're looking into, so you can completely control all of that data, what they see and what they're not allowed to see, and how they're allowed to interact with the data that's on there.
Cool. Okay. Right. So that was one of the questions. Can you remember the other one, Richard? I can't remember what the other point was. Was there another one?
There was something before that.
Okay, well, we'll try and pick up on that if needs be. The important point is that we've got a number of different people that can, are raising these points. So to some extent, the morning meetings are probably going to reveal a lot of this sort of stuff, things that you're coming across on a daily basis, and you think, I wonder how we deal with that, and it's something that we could then share.
It's something we can put out to the wider community. Obviously, it's just a way of being very, very current, isn't it, George? It's you've got an issue that arose yesterday, or that you've been thinking about overnight. Well, share it with us. Who knows? There could be somebody on the call, or somebody we can reach later in the day, potentially even, who could possibly answer that problem, or at least give you somebody to talk to.
Okay, so thank you. Some of you know that in fact, I've had almost, I've had about 14, 15 meetings this week alone, just brief one-to-one meetings. And that's been very helpful for me, understanding what you each want to do. And I think it's been helpful to the individuals as well. So I'm going to roll that out. So if anybody hasn't had a one-to-one meeting with me, we just run out of time before the session, but we can have one-to-ones over the next few days. So I'm going to open up a doodle poll on that, so that you can pick a 15-minute meeting with me, if that would be useful. What I will do in that meeting is explain on a more direct basis what it is that we're each doing, and also understand what you want to do. And we've also produced a video, which is a 20-minute video so it's quite long. It's not something we're using for marketing purposes, but the objective of it is to let people understand, or it provides a resource for people to get their colleagues maybe to get involved. So what I would like to do is just suggest that that you come along to that one-to-one, and we can go from there. The other thing I would say is that if you've got somebody that you would normally refer to, if you've got colleagues that you would ask about the golden thread, or people that you know may want to know about the golden thread, could you put their names in the chat? Because what we're trying to do is increase the community of people that are on the same wavelength as us. So if you've got somebody then that you would normally turn to ask a question about the Building Safety Act or fire safety or whatever, if you put their name in the chat, we can invite them along, and they can then be part of the community. And on that point, I'm just going to hand over briefly to Mandeep, because I was talking to Mandeep this morning about how we can standardize a lot of the Regulation 38 stuff. Mandeep, you had some really good ideas on that. Can I hand over to you?
Yeah, thanks, George. So yeah, so I mean, obviously we've got the Regulation 38, and then obviously just to be clear, there's two Regulation 38s that deal with information handover. The first one is, as we all know, the building regulations, which deals with fire safety, or the fire information, not just fire safety information. And then you've got Regulation 38 in the high risk building procedures, which deals with actually the kind of golden thread of information and the kind of B flow information, which is to do with like ventilation, overheating, mechanical services, and all that kind of stuff. So what me and George were talking about earlier this morning was a kind of almost like a kind of template kind of standardization of a kind of workflow where we would probably not, I would say to start with, not tackle the whole golden thread. But if we tackled maybe like something like a smaller subsection like the fire and emergency file, and then kind of worked that through to kind of give an example for the industry of what we would expect in a standard in fire emergency file, that might be a good place to start. And then what we're kind of potentially discussing was kind of mapping out a few things to create like a kind of a whole workflow. So I've just been scribbling a few things down actually after I spoke to George in terms of ideas. But the first thing we'll talk about is the fire emergency file and what kind of assets would be kind of covered in the fire emergency file. So it would identify the assets. Then the second step would be to kind of identify the information deliverables, which are kind of related to those assets, basically. And then the third part of it would be how do you practically actually put this in place to tie in with information management principles. And this would be very open. So those information management principles would apply to any common data environment. So it would really kind of drive the industry. And I think that's the key thing is how do we tie this all back to information management? Because at the end of the day, we're a BIM kind of a task group. So, I mean, and then I've got some, I mean, and as part of that as well, would probably tie in stuff like the kind of master information delivery plans, task information delivery plans, and then touch on the kind of philosophy in BS 8644 as well. So it's kind of maybe just kind of creating a kind of a whole kind of a worksheet to kind of guide people through what constitutes a good fire and emergency file. And obviously, as I mentioned as well, the fire and emergency file, the kind of backbone to the Building Safety Act really is the kind of Hackett report. And I think we need to refer to the different sources to get a good kind of comprehensive overview of what should be as part of a fire and emergency file, rather than maybe kind of looking at the legislation, which is pretty brief. And I think one of the concepts as well as part of the fire and emergency file as well is how we use kind of intelligent, which we touched on earlier, using kind of the metadata to search for information basically. So what we mentioned earlier is about multiple versions of the truth. I don't care where that truth exists. It might not be in your CD, it might be in a separate system, but as long as we can point people to those kind of versions of truth and then search for that information using metadata, that truth should only exist in one place, basically. It doesn't matter where it is, but if we can start doing that, then what that helps us do is when you've got stuff like O&M manuals are great and they've got their own cause, which is for operation and maintenance. But in the Hackett report, it also recommends O&M manuals are part of the fire and emergency file. So what we need to do is have a mechanism where we assign metadata to information so it can be filtered for the cause which is needed. So, and then, so for example, if I say this is part of the fire and emergency file and the O&M stuff, depending on what container I choose, it should be able to sort the information for me. But I feel like the industry isn't grasping this kind of use of metadata at the moment. And I think that's what we need to kind of spell out. And I think that will be a good drive, maybe to the industry to set up a bit of a benchmark.
So thank you, Mandeep. So Mandeep's offered to sort of coordinate a little work stream on that. So if you're interested in standardizing fire and emergency files, for example, if you just put standardization into the chat, if that's something that you're interested in either contributing to or consuming, then put it in and we can remember we're all volunteers here, so everybody's putting their time and effort in, but you've got a quid pro quo getting stuff out of it. So, Richard, I'll hand back to Pav.
Could I have any other business, if you don't mind? Just 10 seconds. We're restricting, I understand we're talking about golden thread at this moment in time, but just remember the principles that you're gathering. If you gather the modules, and we've been talking about this, George, there are elements that impact CDM regulations as well, effective health and safety files, low-rise buildings, and other parts. And my request is, if you're looking at a wider group, I would love for you to turn it. I don't know how to have a conversation. If you say golden thread, automatically they look at it's a client requirement. It's linked to the Safety Act, building safety regulations, but the rest of the industry will benefit from this working group, if you don't mind. And I think there's a gap of having our own terminology of golden thread light that will cut across all industry, all the BIM stuff, have coordinated good asset information that improves health and safety. If you don't mind, if you can extend it just to that much, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Can I just answer that, Richard?
Yeah, Pav, very much so. I was going to, actually. Go on.
Yeah, Pav, absolutely. I think you know that I'm looking at things from the wider perspective as well, and I think we all are. But what I was trying to do, what shocked me in reviewing several of these projects that are being handed over, is that the most straightforward and clear thing that should be being done isn't being done. And I found it quite shocking, really, that the fire safety side of things, which after the last 4 years, I'm amazed that that people aren't taking it adequately seriously, or maybe misunderstanding or whatever. I think it's so. What we're trying to do is, if we can get the Regulation 38 stuff right, then that builds a lot more that can be addressed. So I'm absolutely on board with what you're saying, Pav.
Thank you.
It's a question of getting something nailed. Yeah. Getting something nailed. That's what it comes down to. We can build from that slowly out, but just get something nailed, because at the moment there's not much of that.
So one of the challenges is that most organisations last week at the DCW were talking about the golden thread, right? So it's great that people are recognising it, but everybody's interpreting it differently. And the whole point about this task group is for us as a community to actually have a common understanding of what it's about, and then we stand a chance of delivering it.
Right, we really need to be very, very brief now. Phil.
All I was going to say is one of the big things that I see a lot is that people still don't know where their information resides. We're still in a world of silos, and nobody produces an information web diagram. It doesn't, as I said, to see where all of that information is. So people just don't know what they don't know, and nobody seems to ever ask. That was my point.
Absolutely, and that's what we're trying to address. Kevin, briefly, please.
Yeah, just a quick one. One thing about health and safety files, because I'm working through stuff at the moment written some stuff on Golden Thread, working with clients, stuff. One of the elements we've also been looking at health and safety file and occupied buildings, and as part of that is the fact that what sits in a health and safety file, okay, we have all the various information as built and all that kind of stuff, but one of the really key elements is the risk elements that are more the sort of softer information, shall we say, about elements to say, look, actually, how do I access that? Actually, you need to be aware of that when you go to site, not specifically just warranties and things like that, which is fine. I think there's a challenge also of understanding that stuff. So if somebody's looking at a element and going, actually, there's an access issue there, or the designer's done that. So that softer information as part of that element also needs to be considered and think about and how that goes on. And the only one point I was going to make, golden thread, we need to determine, everyone talks about golden thread. Golden thread is compliance and elements. I think there are elements also is about maintenance and day-to-day maintenance, and we have to very define with the AP, and there needs to be a system to say, look, actually, this is golden thread. This is stuff that is over golden thread, as per it says in the CSCL document in August last year. So I think we need to be very clear about what is golden thread in terms of compliance and what is about general maintenance.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, right. So just a quick reminder of the last couple of chat to put in the chat. George's 1-to-1, put 1-to-1 in the chat. Mandeep standardization work stream, put standardization in the chat. Now, this is a very lively group, as you can appreciate, and we want to keep that going. So the next meeting will be in approximately 3 weeks. We'll keep you posted. Please watch out for those invites. Thank you very much indeed for what has been an excellent meeting. It's been your meeting and you've made it. Thank you, and we will see you very, very soon.
If you've not provided your WhatsApp details, if you could also do that, because we want to use the WhatsApp to pull people together as well. And remember that from Monday, we're going to be running the 8:30 meetings. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to do that, Richard.
Don't worry about that. You'll be getting a link. You'll be one link which you will be able to click on at any point over the next X number of months to join the 8:30 coffee break, morning coffee break, live with who knows who. Maybe you. Okay. Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.